The following is a program of the Santa Barbara County Education Office. To learn more, visit sbceo.org.
I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools, and I am so delighted to introduce my guest today, Kelly Keene, third-year English teacher at San Marcos High School in the Santa Barbara Unified School District. Kelly, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're so excited to hear about all that you do at San Marcos High School as an English teacher and your award as Distinguished New Educator that you were named this year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, very exciting. One of only 3 in the county. We'll dive into that in a little bit, but let's start with you growing up. Where were you born, raised, and where did you grow up?
I grew up in Los Angeles, lived there pretty much my whole life, and I went to a really large public high school for my 4 years. And then when I went to college, I spent about 4 years in the Bay Area at UC Berkeley.
Wonderful. When you say LA, LA's pretty big.
I was in Woodland Hills, so kind of a little bit of the San Fernando Valley, a little on the outskirts, but close enough to a lot of the downtown LA life and opportunities that are available there too.
And big high school too, really.
Yeah, 4,000 students. I have to kind of take a step back and reflect on that sometimes because that's larger than a lot of colleges.
Right.
And yeah, it was an experience for sure.
Definitely experience, and San Marcos High School is about a little over 2,000, so your high school is double the one that you went to. And so you attended Berkeley, and tell us about your major. I think many people may not have known that this was an option for as a major, so you tell us what that was.
Yeah, I majored in rhetoric, and I first heard of that as being a field of study when one of my favorite high school English teachers told us that they had majored in rhetoric when they went to UC Santa Cruz. And so when I was kind of still undecided as a freshman at Berkeley, I was thinking about what I wanted to do, and I wanted to be a teacher, so I figured might as well major in something that good teachers before me majored in too.
That's great.
And it's kind of an interdisciplinary major that focuses on discourse and philosophy and language and how you use it to serve a purpose.
And probably definitely serves the purpose now as an English teacher at San Marcos.
Yes.
Yes, for sure. And when did you know you wanted to be a teacher? It sounds like you knew in college as an undergrad that that's what you wanted to head to, but how did you know that that was the career choice for you?
I always kind of thought about it as an option, but it wasn't until I was an undergrad that I thought of it as more of a long-term profession. I always thought, I'll have a career and then I'll go back to teaching, when I'm done with that first career. And then I realized there was no other career I really cared about and kept thinking about. And so I was like, you know what, let's just be a teacher right off the bat and go for it.
And where did you get your teaching credential?
I got my credential at UCSB.
UCSB, and a fantastic program there. You get your teaching credential and then you earn your master's degree at the same time, right? That's how it worked for you?
Yeah, it's a pretty quick program. I knew I wanted to be in Southern California, so I was applying to Cal State Northridge or UCLA. But I really liked UCSB's program because you could get your master's and your teaching credential in 1 year. They also offer international traveling opportunities in that year, so they pack a lot in. But I feel really prepared, so I'm glad that I went there.
I'm glad you went there too. I went there as well, so an extra plug for UCSB's program.
Yeah.
So let's talk about during your undergrad years. I think there was something that was very influential, impactful for you, which was your volunteering. So can you share with the viewers today about what volunteering you did and what that meant for you, and what does it mean for you today?
Yeah, I've always tried to volunteer when I can. My mom was really good about encouraging us to give back to the community because she worked for the city of LA, and we just always had opportunities through her to kind of give back and get involved. So when I went to Berkeley, I looked for other ways that I could get involved in that community because it was new to me. And one of the programs that I got involved with was the YWCA, and they had a financial literacy program where they would go into schools in Oakland and the East Bay area and provide these classes for students students so that they could start to learn about long-term financial goals and how they can make smart decisions with credit versus debit and investing and how to open a checking account and all those things that a lot of people learn from their parents. But if your parents didn't know that, then it's hard to kind of break that cycle. So that was the first time I was involved in schools and just in front of a classroom teaching for the first time. And that kind of really helped shape and solidify my idea that I wanted to be a teacher too.
What grade levels were you volunteering in for the financial literacy?
It was primarily high school, so like 10th and 11th grade classes. I think we did go to one junior high. Yeah.
Such an important life skill, the financial literacy. I'm sure that it helped a lot of students for you to be there volunteering.
Yeah, it was fun too.
Good, good. And it sounds a little bit like just kind of sort of inserting yourself into a classroom, and maybe like substitute teaching, which I know you did a lot of. Share with the viewers some of your experiences or where you did substitute teaching. What did that teach you?
Oh, so much. I would recommend it to anyone who's going into teaching, just so you can kind of be in classes and see a variety of different learning environments. I got my sub-credential and worked in LA for a temping agency. So I was in charter schools and private schools all over LA County. And I was out in Palmdale. I got to see schools that had adopted one-to-one iPads before a lot of other schools were doing that. I got to work in classes from different subject levels and or subject areas and grade levels. And so it definitely puts you through the ringer, because as a guest teacher, it's a little bit harder to manage a class or get through curriculum you didn't plan yourself, but it gave me some perspective on what different schools and campuses could look like.
Definitely great perspective for sure. From a whole spectrum and variety, it sounds like. Grade level, schools, opportunities, one-to-one initiatives, etc., charter and other public schools. Fascinating. And that was in the Palmdale area mostly?
Palmdale, San Fernando Valley. It was really all over. I was driving a lot that year too. Put some miles on my car.
Put some miles on the car, yeah. And it's interesting that you say that's something that you would highly recommend for somebody who might think about going into the teaching profession. I don't know if I've heard that recommendation before, so thank you for that tip.
No problem.
And what about student teaching? Once you were at UCSB's program, they really do have you work in classrooms as a student teacher with cooperating teachers. Tell us about that experience. Where was your student teaching experience held?
I was lucky to be at 3 different schools for that year. So I spent 10 weeks at Dos Pueblos with Lisa Copenjan and got to see what that school is like. Lisa's awesome, and she kind of taught me how to start a school year and how to run a back to school night and work with 10th grade students. And then after that, I was at La Colina with Haley Rehor and working with 8th graders in English class there. And then my last placement was at San Marcos with Susan Thompson, where I got to do a full takeover. And I was really lucky to have that, because with the block schedule, you get a whole new batch of students at the turn of the semester. And so it was kind of like I taught a whole year's worth of curriculum for my full takeover. It was stressful and very challenging to be a student teacher, but I think I learned a lot that year.
I think you did, for sure. And it sounds to me, I've heard that student teachers now often are sent to your classroom to observe. Why do you think that is, and how do you feel when they come?
I think one of the reasons they come to see my classes is because I'm used to having so many people in the room. I work with a cooperating teacher, and I also have student teachers there for a literacy placement. So I'm used to having people in and out, and it's not too much of a burden on me to come in and just be one more body in the room. But I also try and give them an honest perspective on what teaching's like. So if the lesson is supposed to go down a certain path and we have to make a change mid-lesson, I'd like to be able to show them how to do that and not totally freak out or worry about missing out on something. So I hope that's why.
I'm sure that is. I'm sure that is. You just said something that was so interesting to me, because you were saying that it's important for you to give an honest look at how a teaching day or period might go, or a block period might go. Why is that honesty? Why is an honest approach to say, this is what it is, so important to share?
That's a great question. Teaching is something that almost everyone has a perspective on, because we all go through school. So we all know what we thought when we were students when we looked at our teachers. And then we also watch TV and movies, and we see how teachers are portrayed in different ways. But when people go into the field of teaching, sometimes they're kind of They realize that there's so much more work that goes on behind the scenes, or more training that they have to go through in order to become a teacher. And so while teaching has a high turnover rate, I think that the teachers who are really good, who stay in the profession, tend to be the ones that have a realistic perspective on what's expected of them when they go into it. So that's one of the reasons why I think that honesty is important. It's a great job with a lot of rewarding opportunities, but there are a lot of challenges and aspects of the job that the general public doesn't get to see. So your student teaching year is a chance to see that and learn about those things and kind of work through them. And that's why I think it's important.
Kelly, thanks so much for pausing on that, because I think it is so important. There's several things that you said. One is what people might expect or think that the teaching profession is or looks like. And then there's just unpacking it and saying, you know what, it is really rewarding, and it's really, really an incredible job, but it's a little different than what's portrayed or what maybe you experienced as a student. And here's some of the realities of it. I think that's a really great contribution you're making to the teaching profession through your honesty. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. So as an English teacher, you do a lot for so many students. One of the pieces that you share and teach, it has to do with the classic Romeo and Juliet. So such a classic. Yeah. That's really is it for 9th grade, 10th grade, or 11th grade?
We teach it at 9th grade at San Marcos.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there have been stories I've heard about some of the props that you've created. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm really lucky. I have a great English department that I work with at San Marcos. And so one of my colleagues, Rebecca Miller, her dad actually constructed these swords for students to use when we're acting out the different scenes. And so we share all those props and resources. We have crowns and cloaks and all kinds of fun stuff to kind of get the students to buy into the lesson a little bit more and act it out and have fun with it. So that they can read Shakespeare, but also kind of enjoy it and not just feel like it's homework.
Bring it to life. That's
bring it
great.
To life.
Bring it to life. And you're teaching 11th grade right now, 10th grade last year. Are there what are some of the plays that are being taught in those grades?
Plays for 9th grade, Romeo and Juliet is the big one. 10th grade, I gave my class an option between Julius Caesar and Macbeth. And then
what did they choose?
Some of them some of them were doing Julius Caesar and some were doing Macbeth at the same time. So we did some book groups. And then 11th grade is more kind of moving away from Shakespeare a little bit, and we have The Crucible, Raisin in the Sun. Fences is another one that some teachers are considering incorporating into their curriculum. So lots of variety in plays that we can use.
Very good. And some that are very classic and some that are new, and something new actually that you brought to San Marcos is a festival of writing. So share with us, the audience today, Festival of Writing. What is that? I know you brought that into the school. Tell us all about it.
So I first learned about it as an option for students to publish their work to an authentic audience. So a lot of times students just write and they think, okay, the teacher's going to read it, I'm going to get it back, and that's the end of it. But we want writing to be an experience that students share with their classmates, with their families, friends, community members. So the pathways, we had a speaker, I think her name is Amy Fallbear from Ohio. She came out and showed us how she did a multi-genre unit and then used a writing festival, after school hours, so that parents can come in and see the product of the students' hard work over the course of that unit. So we took that idea and then started it last spring with just 2 classes, and we opened up the school library, had student publish writing and bring in parents to come read it, and then had some students read it aloud with snacks and balloons and all kinds of fun stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've expanded that. We have our second writing festival, and then our third one is coming up in spring, and we're combining it with the Freer Writing Contest and just trying to make it a really positive event to show students that the work you do in English class kind of has relevancy outside of just your class,
Absolutely. It's not just writing yourself to the teacher and back. It's really sharing that and expressing your points of view and your thinking. Say to the viewers today, why is it so important, or how can being public with your work be important for a student? And I think about that a lot in other subjects too. Art. Their students often will create something in art and publish it. It's very important. Other sorts of content areas do the same. But for writing and for just the aspect of being public with your work, how does that make its way into importance for students?
I think that one thing it does is instills confidence in the students if they can see something they've worked on in somebody else's eyes, or getting recognition from others that's not just one individual they see every single day. But it also gives them a sense of purpose. No author published in any genre writes without a purpose and writes without an audience in mind. So if the student's only writing with one teacher in mind, that's very different from writing on a topic with a wider audience in mind. And they can be more effective in their work. And they can also actually change things in their community or contribute to a conversation on a topic that they're passionate about, and see that it's not just taking place in school, but that school is a place for them to practice these skills so that they can then take them outside the school and apply them to their actual lives.
That's great. Festival of Writing sounds fantastic. I'd love to come see it sometime. And something I want to pause on too is around student engagement. It's really important. It's an important part of your teaching style and your approach and your value is to ensure that all the students are really, really engaged with their work, not just the writing, festival of writing, but in every day. How do you approach student engagement in your class?
It's a challenge. I think it's a challenge a lot of new teachers really focus on, because you can design a lesson that you're passionate about, but if the students aren't invested in that lesson too, then how do you bridge that gap? Engagement can come from a lot of different ways. You can engage students because they're interested in the topic. You can engage them because their peers are interested in the topic and they're interested in their peers. You can also make it relevant for them so that they see a level of urgency or importance in the lesson and skill that they're practicing so that they can apply it beyond the classroom too. There's lots of different ways, and one way that I try and keep students engaged is build classroom community so that they feel safe in the space and they feel free taking risks, and they also feel comfortable working with me and working with their classmates. So that's one way that I try and
building that culture, building the community, and really having an expectation that there will be lots of student engagement in your everyday, it sounds like. And I've heard you talk about technology use and what it's good for and what it's fun for, but not necessarily instructional. Could you say a little bit about how you use technology in your approach in your instruction?
Yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can use technology to enhance instruction and maybe change your lesson so that you're doing something new you couldn't do without it. In our district, we are moving towards incorporating iPads in the classroom, and teachers have been given different devices and tools to use over the past, 10 years almost. But I would say the lesson and skill comes first. So you try and think, what do you want the students to be able to do, and then how can that technology give them a chance to practice that skill? I try and use technology to be transparent with parents as well and let them know what the students' grades are, what all the assignments are. If it's posted online, it's a little bit more accessible. But for example, today we used the student iPads to access Google Classroom, where they all had a digital document that they could work on, and then that document could be easily shared with other students and kind of collaborated on. We also use technology to review for vocab. We use this tool called Quizlet, so they can all work on teams to answer questions about vocabulary words they're practicing on. So yeah, it works on a lot of different levels, I think.
Sounds like a very dynamic classroom.
Yes,
we try for sure, and I'm sure it happens for sure. So let's switch now to the Distinguished New Educator Award that you received earlier this year. Again, congratulations. It's a big honor, one of 3 throughout the whole county. It's how did you feel when you heard that it was you?
I was a little bit like, oh my gosh, wow. I feel very honored and thankful to be recognized. I think that it's always great to recognize teachers when they're working really hard and doing good stuff. I also feel like I can think of at least 5 to 10 other teachers that would have been, just as worthy of getting this award, because we work in such a strong district that has so many good teachers. So yeah, thankful and honored, I guess.
When you saw the video of you, and all the different people talking about you at the awards event earlier this year, did you hear something or see something that you thought, wow, I didn't know that that's what people thought of my work and how I am?
Yeah, I was very touched. My collaborating teacher, Joanne Cloutier, she said some really nice things that kind of made me feel good about what I'm doing. you go through every day just kind of working and making sure you can get through every lesson, but it's nice to know that other colleagues recognize your work too, and that you can give to each other and help support each other in the work that we're doing. And then of course my students always crack me up and make me a little emotional, but they're just so positive, and they come to school with such optimism that it makes me thankful that I get to work with them.
That is great. That's really great. And so, I think about that evening and seeing the video, knowing you, and I know that you've had a lot of mentors, help you through your teaching. I'm sure you mentor others as well. Can you talk a little bit about how mentorship really impacts you as a teacher?
For me, I've had some great mentors. I've been so fortunate. Tim Dewar at UCSB is just really great and helped me be the teacher I am today. Susan Thompson, my cooperating teacher, she nominated me for this award, and she continues to check in with me to this day and give me advice and feedback on what I'm doing. And I would say a mentor is really important, because if you don't have kind of a model of what you're supposed to be doing, going into a new career that is so complex and has so many different facets to it is a little overwhelming. So having someone you can just kind of reflect with and bounce questions off of has really made the difference for me.
I love that. And you're in your third year of teaching. We can't believe it, I'm sure, ending the third year almost and going into the fourth. Incredible how fast the year goes. But as you look back into a 3-year career, has there been any special highlights that you wouldn't mind sharing with the viewers today?
Yeah, there's been a lot. I've been very fortunate. One, I had an opportunity to visit La Cuesta a month or so ago and kind of get to see some of the work they're doing there. And some of the students that I taught as 9th or 10th graders are at that school now. And I got to talk to them and see what they've been up to since I last saw them. And some of them just have matured so much and have these skills that I didn't get to see manifest when I had them in the classroom. But when I come back a couple of years later and see them, articulating themselves in such a profound way, that, really is what makes it for me. It's really about the students. I would say my highlights are when we have a writing festival and the things that we've been working so hard on get validated by parents and other staff members, or when you go to a sporting event and you get to see some of your students in a whole different light than what you got to see in your classroom. And it's the small things really that kind of add up and make it worthwhile.
Make it worthwhile. You said a lot about what is great about being a teacher, but if you were to really zoom out, wide lens, what would you say are the best parts of being a teacher?
The students, by far, they're my favorite part. Sometimes going into a new school year, you're kind of stressed about all the things you have to think of and pull together by day one. But it's when I'm in front of the students, learning their names, getting to understand what they're bringing to our classroom, that's when it all kind of makes sense for me. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I'm here. This is what I work so hard for. And so the students are my favorite part of teaching.
I love that. And I just want to ask you an aspect of engaging with students, and students are the favorite part, and really you have such a great relationship with the students in your classroom. Do you get an opportunity to engage with parents outside of even the writing festival? How do you bring the parents in, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, we get to meet parents and back to school night, and then my doors are always open if parents want to come in and have one-on-one meetings. We correspond a lot via email now that technology has given us that tool.
Yes.
So I try and reach out to parents if students are doing well and if they might be struggling. I also, I'm on the site council committee, so I get to work with some parents through that. And then anytime you're involved with like an after-school event, getting to put the child's face to the parent who's there supporting them is kind of a fun way to make it all come together too.
That's wonderful. So you talk about, you clearly have a lot of energy, you have great ideas, you brought new things to San Marcos and for your students. You are on the go. And to counterbalance that, it's really important for you to unwind and relax. It is important for everyone to do that. How do you find a time to relax and unwind? Not only a time, but what is it that you do?
Yeah, finding time sometimes can be challenging. I always have a stack of grading I'm taking home with me, but I try and keep the weekends as free of work as I can.
That's great.
I like to go to the beach, read a book, go on a nice hike, or travel if I can. So I'm going to be going to Seattle over Memorial Day weekend. I'm excited about that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yes, good. So you try to find the time, and then when you find the time, you get to completely relax and unwind. Good. And so up-and-comers, we have people who are watching today who might be considering entering into the teaching profession. What advice would you give to those who might be interested in entering our profession?
I would say try and see what schools are like and get back into the classroom and observe as much as you can, just to kind of reorient yourself with what it's like to be around students and what it's like to be in schools. Teaching, just like any other industry, changes too, and so what we went through when we were in school might be different from what schools are like now. So observing and getting that experience is very helpful. And then also just, asking yourself why you want to be a teacher. Is it for the summer vacations, or is it, for something that speaks a little bit more to your heart? And if you have that passion for it, it can be one of the best jobs in the world.
Sounds like you would recommend it.
Yes, I would.
So we're winding down here with our interview, but I want to give you an opportunity to address your colleagues back at San Marcos. What message might you have to your friends and colleagues at San Marcos High School?
Oh, I would say that they are just the best. I am so thankful for my colleagues. They're one of my favorite things about working at San Marcos. We have a really strong English department that supports each other and collaborates in amazing ways. And I would also say thank you to my colleagues for supporting me over the past 3 years and for making San Marcos a great place to work and a great place to learn and grow, for sure.
And what message would you like to share with parents?
I would like to say thank you to the parents for raising such great kids, but also ask them to keep in mind when talking to teachers and working with them that we're all on the same team. I think teachers and parents have the same goal, which is to help students succeed and grow academically. So when they can come together, it's a really powerful thing to help support a student.
Definitely, definitely powerful. I think partnerships with any outside entity is so powerful, but with parents, it's really so helpful. There's such a synergy that can happen with that partnership for sure. And finally, let's think about the students that you've had this year. Right now, this year, in the last 3 years, what are some of the messages, or what is a message you'd like to share with your students?
I would say, make good choices. We can only give them so much. At the end of the day, they get to choose what they do on a regular basis and what they pursue and go after high school. So I would say make good choices and kind of own what you do. Be honest and kind to people, and never give up.
Never give up. I really appreciate all of that you shared today as our distinguished new educator, but somebody with such wisdom and experience, and you've really had such an impact on your students. And it seems like while you've brought some new ideas to San Marcos, for some reason I feel like it's just the beginning. I feel like you're just going to keep bringing more and more and contributions to the school, to the students, to the community. I just want to say on behalf of Santa Barbara County, we really appreciate and thank you for all that you've done.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for being my guest today. Really appreciate it, and I can't wait to hear what comes next for Kelly Keene. I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools. Thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of Education Matters.